Welcome to my tutorial where I've just sped up myself painting. Obviously, I don't paint this fast, but anyway, I just wanted to show you what I do and how to, or how I create a landscape painting using soft pastels. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in the different values of an image. I'm looking at a photo. I don't have the photo in here, but I'm looking at a photo of a meadow that has bluebonnets in it. It's a Texas landscape. And I've decided that I wanted to do an alcohol wash. So it's rubbing alcohol that I'm liquefying the base colors that I put onto my paper. Now, this paper that I'm using is UArt paper, but I have it mounted onto a foam board so that it doesn't buckle. UArt paper will kind of buckle a little bit if you liquefy the underpainting like this. But I do like a liquefied underpainting. I don't always do it. I do it occasionally, and I thought that you'd like to see a demonstration of that. So so now I'm just reinforcing some of the different colors that you see in nature. You don't just see green leaves, green grass, brown trunks of trees. There's actually, if you look really close, there's actually a lot of different colors, and even like a single thing, like a leaf, you'll see purples and reds and yellows, especially depending on the season that we're looking at. But I think that overall there are just a whole bunch of colors that our eye doesn't just like pick them out unless you're actually looking for that color. But when I'm painting, I have that in mind. So, oh, and I thought I'd mention that before I started adding some soft pastels to this underpainting, that I used like a wet rubbing alcohol underpainting. I did let it dry. So if you look closely, you'll notice that my shirt is different. That means that while it was drying, I went and got a shower. So here I am with some wet hair and a different shirt, a clean shirt, working on my painting. I really enjoy working on the soft pastel paintings. I'm really actually surprised at the results that I can get using this medium to create landscape paintings. So right here, I'm adding what you'd call sky holes. So you have a tree and you have a background, you see the sky behind the tree. But a lot of times you can see that negative space in between the leaves and tree branches and trunks. So those are called sky holes. I mean, it could be that your tree is up against maybe a mountain. Maybe there's a mountain range in the back of your trees. So I guess those would be called mountain holes. I don't know. So anyway, basically what you're doing is you're just showing that, yeah, you can see through the trees, and here's what's behind the trees, whether it's a sky or a mountain range or whatever. So there's a bunch of trees in the background. In Texas, typically the land is pretty flat. This is a Texas scene. But in parts of the country, in parts of the state, I guess we could all kind of think that it is country, but it's not. It's a state. So in parts of the state, there's rolling hills, and I mean not in every place. A lot of it's flat, but there are rolling hills, and some rolling hills are bigger than others depending on where you are, like Austin, San Antonio, that kind of area. But um, the rolling hills, in this case, these trees are actually kind of downhill. Uh, but you're seeing this meadow full of wildflowers, and what's blooming right now is the bluebonnets. So Texas is famous for the bluebonnets. They're not the only state that's famous for blue wildflowers. California actually has a lot of blue flowers that bloom, a lot of different colors in their landscapes. So I'm fascinated with wildflowers in a meadow, no matter where it is. I'm also fascinated with the way the sunlight comes through trees and hits the various meadows or wildflowers. The sunlight will actually determine sometimes the color of things. Like if you've seen a sunset where you have a pink sky, then suddenly you can see that pink reflection on everything. So I'm fascinated with that, but especially a not a sunrise. I mean, especially a sunrise and a sunset. Um, they're different, but kind of the same, or the same fascination that I have, and it just never gets old. I find myself taking photographs of sunsets and sunrises over and over and over again, and it's always seems like a unique photo, different from all of the other hundreds of photos that I've taken. But I love the way the sunlight makes things look. So right now I'm just kind of graying down the backdrop of trees in the way back in the distance, because I want to push that back. I want to push them. They're far away, and if you look at something, really look at something in nature, like the distant, it could be a mountain range or a tree range of trees. The further away they are, they're gonna look bluer and maybe purpler, or they're definitely going to be grayed down. They're not going to be as intense the color as what you would see if you were like right up next to it. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to help your landscape to give it that atmospheric perspective that it needs, to be believable. Um, you know, just everything that you do with your pastel. It's like, this is my brush. It's a dry brush. It's a dry medium. It's not wet. It's I'm not slinging paint like I normally do with my acrylic paints. Uh, and if I used oil paints, which I do occasionally, I don't usually sling the paint when I'm doing oils, but I'm slathering the paint on. With pastels, it's dry. It's a kind of a different thing. It's a different animal, I guess you could say. But I've completely fallen in love with what you can do with them. I've fallen in love with what you can do with just about any medium, whether it's acrylic paint or oil paint or watercolor or charcoal. Now, charcoal is also a dry medium, and it is an amazing medium that you can get some awesome results with. I find the whole thing fascinating. just working with different mediums and learning what they can do. And the thing is, I'm using the same principles, the same elements of design and perspective that you would use, no matter what you're using. Like, no matter if you're painting with acrylics or oil, or if you're drawing with charcoal or soft pastel, so, or colored pencils. So I think that what I really love about dry and soft pastels is that you're adding layers and layers and layers. And that is what I've always loved to do. I love adding layers of color. And not just color, but layers of values. Like, a dark as opposed to a light color, or a medium as opposed to a dark or a light. So layers of values and layers of temperatures of the colors. So, I mean, there are different temperatures of color. So, depending on, well, there's so many different little tricks of the trade, but as you're pushing things back into the distance, they're not just getting more blurry and more blue and purple and grayed down, but they're getting lighter. And as they come forward and closer to you, you're seeing a larger whatever, a larger flower, a larger tree, and a more crisp, a warmer color. I think that it's really cool how you can play around with these ideas. And what we're doing basically is we're telling the viewer, even though this is just a two-dimensional piece of paper, I'm going to make you think it's a three-dimensional 3D scene that you can like step right into the scene. You're going to be able to step right into this meadow and frolic in the bluebonnets when I'm done with it. So that is my goal, is to bring out that feeling that I get when I see this scene, to try to replicate that natural beauty that you see in nature. That is amazing. That never gets old. I never get tired of looking at stuff like this. So I've found myself like completely, infatuated, I guess, with landscapes. And the funny thing is, when I got back into painting after years and years of not really doing much with it, landscape was not exactly what I had in mind as to what I wanted to paint. I don't know what happened, but eventually I definitely got into it. I think that when I moved to California and started going to art galleries and seeing some of the gorgeous, like beautiful California landscapes that were done like in the 1920s, and that I love that style, and that captivated me. It didn't captivate me enough to get me started into painting landscapes right away, but eventually it got me. And it does run in the family. I have a grandmother that was really into landscape painting, especially bluebonnets. She's a Texas grandma. I have two Texas grandmas, and one actually got into painting portraits. So, it runs in the family, and I love to paint people too. But right now, I think I'm obsessed with landscapes. I go through phases, I guess you could say, but completely fallen in love with the soft pastels. And I have experimented with other subject matters. So I did paint a coffee cup with some beignets. Let's see what else. I painted a vase of flowers. Just to, play around. I haven't painted a portrait of someone yet, but I think that will be maybe a project coming up this week that I'll do. Just to challenge myself and try to expand. So the key here for these soft pastel paintings is being able to paint multiple layers because and with a light touch because what happens is you're adding some pigment, a layer of pigment, and then you're adding another layer of pigment here and there, and those pigments will illuminate the tiny little crystals inside of those pigments. If you look at under a microscope, tiny little crystals will illuminate together, and it's as if you've created a new color with them. So it's pretty fascinating the way this works. So in this painting, there are a gazillion bluebonnets. The reference photo that I'm looking at is just like there's millions of bluebonnets. And do I want to color or paint every single one of those? No. First of all, your eye in nature, you can't really see every single flower. The further you go back, you just see like rows of color. You can't see each detailed flower. So you have to remember that. You have to remember not to do that, not to try to color in every single little tiny dot of flower because that would be insane. First of all, your eye couldn't see it anyway. So it would be silly to do that. But so there's a going back and forth trying to balance how much detail I put in here and how much detail I should put in here, which takes practice. I paint a lot. If you follow me, you'll notice that I paint something every day. Sometimes I paint several paintings in a day. Depends if I'm working or not. I work. I have a regular full-time job, so that cuts into my personal time. So anyway, just finishing touches up here. I've got like a hard pastel where I'm just kind of putting in some like uh, some grassy vertical marks, just to kind of give you the idea that we're in a meadow when there's grasses, even though I'm not going to paint every single grass. It's hard not to paint every single grass. You have to like step away and make yourself stop. So, um, interesting how it works, but I do love the results. And basically, I wanted to give the feeling, the calm, beautiful, the feeling that I have looking at the scene. And that's ultimately what I'm hoping the viewer will see. It's just the beauty and the sunrise and the colors of the trees and the flowers and all that. So, and then last but not least, my signature, which looks like a 2-year-old did it. Anyway.